Hey everybody, Quantum here, and this will be a member first video because I want to cover something that happened over the April 6th weekend. We did see an Emerald Sapphire deck take first place at a 3K event, a cash tournament. This was a 37 player tournament at Southside Gaming. This is one of, I guess you could say, the more competitive scenes in Lorcana right now. You know, you've got like the CCS, I think in Atlanta, Southside Gaming, I think is in Florida. You've got something going on at Wisconsin at World Class Cards. Forgive me if I didn't get all those exact locations right. I am Canadian, so my American geography may not be the greatest, but I believe those are where those scenes are, and these are some of the most competitive scenes. So to see a deck that really hasn't been doing much in the metagame, you know, since since Arcasia's Island release in Emerald Sapphire come out and take a win here. I haven't really seen a deck list like this. I've experimented a little bit with Emerald Sapphire, but my lists focus around things like Under the Sea and things like Popsicle and Sapphire Coil. This list is completely different to that. Even so far as to play Bell, Strange but Special, no lucky dimes or anything like that, but going in heavy on Ink Geyser. And this was in my top 10, right? If you watch my top 10 cards of set 7, I told you guys, I said, you know, Ink Geyser was really hyped up. It was really overpriced on pre-orders. Then it just like crashed. I picked up my foils at around $6 Canadian, which is like 4 USD, because I'm like, yeah, this card, I mean, it's not as broken as people may have thought it was, but it's still an extremely good card. And honestly, if you resolve Ink Geyser in certain scenarios, like, you probably just win the game. Again, if you set things up correctly. So it's a very interesting list here. Not really sure how this list would play necessarily, but let's go ahead and break it down and maybe we can kind of analyze it together and let me know what you think in the comment section below. So we got 4 Clarabelle, Clumsy Guest. This is the 1 drop that you can pay a kicker of 2 in order to banish an item, but it's also good because it obviously synergizes with the Shift Clarabelle. I know one of the things you can do, because I play this line as well, is especially if you can shift Clarabelle or just ramp up to enough ink to do Clarabelle on 7 plus Ink Geyser, which means 10 ink, or if you get the shift line off, 8 ink, right? Because 5 for the shift plus 3 for Ink Geyser is 8. You Clarabelle, right? You put all the ink back to the hands when you cast Ink Geyser, then end of the turn, Clarabelle draws you hopefully a bunch of cards, right? And even better, if you have Fishbone Quill up, you can re-ink a bunch from your hand so that your Clarabelle gets you the extra draws, right? If you get that combo off, I would say it's pretty game winning. Of course, you have to worry about what your opponent already has on board and clearing that off, but you know, the 1-drop Clarabelle fits really well into this deck. You'll notice there's no Popsicles, no Hirams. Your other 1-drop in this deck is going to be Develop Your Brain, which is nice. No Visions, just Develop. Again, a 1-cost card, very efficient. But in order to make sure that you hopefully play something on turn 1, Clarabelle or Develop Your Brain. But I imagine you're not too worried if you don't miss on turn. If you do miss something being played on turn 1, what really matters, as usual with all these Sapphire decks, is hitting your turn 2 ramp. But because this deck is also on Fishbone Quill, you have kind of a fallback plan where, of course, you'd like to hit this on 2, but depending on the matchup, depending on the play draw, you might go for Ursula Deceiver if you have this in your hand instead. But you do have 12 2-drops that you can utilize here, and then on 3, you're going to hopefully go for the Fishbone, I imagine. Or again, depending on matchup, depending on scenario, the Kit Cloud Kicker. Obviously, you do not want to be Ink Geysering on turn 3. With the uninkable count in this deck only at 12, of course, you have a lot of cards that would actually just be straight up dead early on, because Genie, Hades, Ink Geyser are not cards you want to play early on, obviously, because you can't in Genie and Hades. They require development of ink and of a board state to actually have some value. And Ink Geyser obviously is a closeout play. You're not going to be playing this on curve on 3. The Scrooge McDuck here just has extra questing power, and a good challenger, I imagine, is pretty good. But yeah, that's your 3-drop curve, and that's how I imagine it would play out. Right, ideally, I imagine you're playing Fishbone, but as usual, if you do hit the turn 2 ramp, right, you're going to be skipping your 3-drop and going straight to 4, in which case I imagine Scrooge or Grammatala would be the ideal drops. I don't know about Bell. This one is really strange to me, because you would think, you know, you see this Bell and you're like, this thing is just instant, you know, Ruby fodder, right? Like, you drop Bell, it gets brawled away, it gets Sapphire Coiled, small C-suit away, big C-suit away. I mean, not on curve, big C-suit, but earlier than turn 8, right? Because if the red-blue deck is ramping, they're going to drop big C-suit, especially if they shift earlier than turn 6 or turn 8 on the shift. So I imagine, you know, once you've cleared out the opponent's board a little bit and you Ink Geyser, if you have a belt or could develop a belt and then play an Ink Geyser, this is a pretty safe card. Again, you're going to have to get back up to, what, 10 ink, is it, in order to proc this ability. Yeah, so I'm really curious as to how this would function in the deck. Because yeah, I mean, if you Ink Geyser, you're not gonna have 10 ink, right? So yeah, that's not really a play if I said that, right? You're not gonna play this, then Ink Geyser all your ink away, so you have 3 left, because you're not gonna be able to get back up to 10 ink for a while. And even on 3 ink, right, opposing Ruby decks can do Brawl Small Sisu still, or ramp back up to Medusa pretty early on before you can even proc this spell for the high quest. So yeah, this one's interesting. What I imagine it's actually used for is the ability to ink extra, which, that may have gone over my head initially. But looking at this card as like an extra way to get Fishbone Quill's like ability, right? Because if you do have this on board and you ink Geyser, if you have a Bell plus a Fishbone, you can now ink 3 times in a turn, right? You can ink off Fishbone, ink for turn, ink off Bell, you're back up to 6 ink. So that's a pretty interesting combo now that I think about it. Totally forgot about Bell's extra ability to ink. And that makes sense, right? Because you get all your ink back to your hand and you're just like, okay, now I got to re-ink everything. And you'll have more inking engines than your opponent. So that's actually kind of cool. Like I said, we're gonna looking at this deck together, fishing that out. So I think that is the plan. That makes way more sense, right? Yeah, that's actually crazy. So like Fishbone or Bell start inking extra, setting up the Geyser play. And Geyser is really disruptive, right? I've tested it a little bit. Obviously, like I said, not this specific deck, but my own variations of Emerald Sapphire, and this one really, really catches my eye. The 4 Grammatala, the 2 Scrooge McDuck. I'm not sure how I feel about the Scrooge. Again, being a 5/5 body that quests for 2, it's great to contest and put questing pressure on board. The 3 Cricky is great to turn all of these weak bodies, even the Grammatala or even the Scrooge McDuck, into huge heavy hitters to wipe out boards, take out locations, that kind of thing. Cricky is like Emerald Crab. It's just better, right? I mean, it costs more, yes, but it quests for 3, not 1. It's a 3/4 instead of a 3/3, which kind of matters, but obviously the higher cost matters, but it is inkable like Crab. But the fact that it can give every character +3 instead of one character +3, even though, the Crab has a leave play effect, turning your Tipo into a 4/2, your Ursula into a 4/3, your Kit Cloud Kicker into a 5/2, etc. Like, that's pretty significant. Grammatala into a 6/3. Like, you're gonna clear a board with the Cricky. It's pretty nice. Genie is pretty good. A 3/4 evasive that quests for 2. This card helps deal with like opposing Diablos as well, if you're worried about that, which is nice. Again, powered up with the Cricky, can take out like opposing Amethyst Genies. So that's good as well. And a card that I think is super underrated is the John Silver from the first chapter. So I'm so happy to see him in this deck. This card does so much that I think people are really overlooking. It's going back to, like, again, if you watch the other member video that I did where I talked about chapter 1 Aladdin, it's still, I think, locked under member only. But like, a lot of these first chapter cards are really being overlooked, I think. And they just get better and better as these like new ways to utilize them come out, right? So John Silver, when you think about it, it stops things like the new Tamatoa from questing and getting the free item play. It forces them to challenge, actually, instead of quest, right? So it could force them to out it, or just not do anything with it. If you don't have anything exerted, they just can't turn it sideways. Obviously, it slows down the big Tamatoa, but that's kind of been shifting away from the meta. It stops things like, just big threats like big Sisu and stuff from questing. It's a pretty good card. And, when this thing turns sideways as well, like, whatever's being thrown into it likely gets taken out as well. Maui Sharks, while they would still get the action back, it clears Maui Shark, it clears Maldragon challenges, it survives the Tamatoa challenge on the 4/5 Tamatoa while taking out that Tamatoa, right? I mean, likely your opponent will do stuff to combo into the John Silver so that they hopefully don't have to crash it, but, it still trades positively, let's say, with 5-drop Maui. So there's a lot of utility with this card, I think, and it's a 2-quester. It comes down, it gets the ability on play, which is really good, and then of course whenever it quests, it also gets to proc the ability. It's just a decent card overall. And in a deck where you can ramp, you get this out early, you really slow down aggro decks as well, right? So if you're going up against aggressive decks, you can really slow them down. Imagine forcing Daisy Duck to throw itself into like a Scrooge McDuck, right? That's pretty nice. So yeah, I think this card has a lot of versatility in the meta right now. It's just hard to find him in a deck where he's really useful. I think the Sapphire Emerald pairing is where he's useful because you can ramp him out early, and he's inkable if he's not good in the matchup or just has no utility at the moment. So yeah, I think this card is really, really nice, and it can help you like stop the opponent from winning the game, right? Like, think about this coming down, you don't have a way to deal with evasive threats, but then this thing forces a Diablo on the opposing side to crash, an opposing Amethyst Genie Wish Fulfilled to crash, right? Like there's so many other utilization things that you can do with this card. It's really really nice. Yeah, I just listed off like 5 different positive interactions with John Silver. Really nice card. I actually should pick up another foil copy because I think the foils are still under $20. Which is honestly, for how much it's being utilized, probably a little over. It probably should be closer at 15 Canadian, but I'm not going to complain at, like 18, 19 bucks if I can get a copy. I think I only have 1 foil, maybe 2. But yeah, I'll definitely be picking them up because I'm just a fan of the card. Even if it's like not good long term, I think I just outlined, like I said, a couple of good scenarios where this card is pretty good into the meta right now. Again, he is very susceptible to removal still, right? Because he gets Sapphire Coil down, just like everything else in the meta, right? And then big C-suit away, small C-suit away, brawl, etc. So he hits the board, he can be vulnerable. But again, when you pair him the right way, when you use him the right way with this kind of deck, you put your opponent on, you're going to need a lot in order to deal with the cards that I have here. And if you can't do it, then this John Silver survives. The Clarabelle, pretty self-explanatory. I already kind of went over the interaction. In my testing, the Clarabelle sometimes seems completely unnecessary because, at least in my version, which is completely different from a philosophy from this deck, I just found myself just having enough advantage anyways because I was playing Hiram engines in mine. But in this deck, when you don't have the Hiram draw engine, the Clarabelle draw engine is probably going to be your primary thing. You ramp up to the Ink Geyser play, right? You make sure you have your Clarabelle. You hopefully have it survive a turn or two. And if you can't do the Clarabelle Ink Geyser in the same turn, if you do successfully proc that combination of Ink Geysering with a Clarabelle on board, end of your turn, you're drawing a ton of cards, right? Especially if you re-ink, 3 or 4 cards off of Fishbone and Bell plus ink for turn. Like it's a pretty big interaction. So aggressively dump your hand. No need to Whole New World anymore, right? With the old school Sapphire Steel, dump your hand off Fishbone, off Bell. Replenish it with the Clarabelle, with other Sapphire decks really popular in the meta right now. Everybody procking their own Hirams, etc. I don't need to run you out of cards. I'll just put you on no ink with the Ink Geyser, right? You can have 15 cards in your hand after I Ink Geyser you. That's fine. You can have no ink to play all those cards. I'll have ways to re-ramp up and just quest out for game. A tempo-oriented Sapphire Emerald deck, really, really powerful. And I'll have 15 cards in my hand as well because I'll draw off this Clarabelle proc if I get the combo off. And a deck like this, I will also say, seems like it would be really good into Sapphire Steel. It could struggle a little bit into Sapphire Ruby, but again, as a tempo-oriented deck, you slow down Sapphire Ruby enough, right? And then you put them on no ink, like they can't really do anything. Ink Geyser was initially seen as a counter to Sapphire Ruby, so it's really cool to see a deck like this actually come out and take the win in what was likely a very heavy Sapphire meta. The 3 Hades here, just as removal, right? I found myself also needing spot removal. I put in Let It Goes, but Hades is probably the better answer here. This player also on You're Welcome. Again, forcing draws makes my Clarabelle draw even more, right? Draw more cards, doesn't matter to me. I actually want you to have cards in hand because I want to proc this Clarabelle off. Again, the goal is that you're going to have all the cards in the world. You're not going to have the ink to play them under the Ink Geyser. We talked about Develop, the Sail, and the Fishbone, and the You're Welcome, all in that last line there. So pretty cool deck. Breaking it down, looking at it, and just kind of analyzing it for the first time here. Let me know what you think. Are you a big fan of this? I think this deck should also be fairly cheap. The Clarabelles and the Hades, Hades I think is like $20 each now, which is crazy because I remember when it was like 10. This card's gone up and down so much. I think if anything has been proven, like Clarabelle, if you can get them under $20 a copy, I would pick them up. Hades, if you can get them under 15, I would pick them up. These are just like good generic cards moving forward. Will these ever be power corrupt? Hades probably will be at some point, although it's hard to say. I mean, Maldragon is still, we constantly see Ruby Sapphire going back to Maldragon. It's like it's back in the deck as a staple now, no matter which variation of Ruby Sapphire you play. Hades, people always seem to just be going back to I need that hard form of removal, and Hades just seems to be the it factor for Sapphire, right? Clarabelle, I doubt this card gets power corrupt anytime soon. It's a very powerful card as it is. It's very meta dependent upon if it's good or not, but that's my take on that. Bell should be really cheap, right? They should be like $15 a copy right now if you are aiming to play this deck, and then everything else should be more or less really affordable, especially in Geyser. I think it's down to under $2 Canadian a copy now, which is crazy. Like I said, I picked up foil ones. I should pick up a non-foil playset just so I have that as well. Because yeah, this card is, I'm telling you guys, like the card is good. Like there's no doubt the card is good. It's just not as broken, I think, as people thought it was going to be. But who knows? We'll see. Maybe this is the start of a trend. Let me know again what you think in the comment section below. Let's go ahead and wrap up this video. If you made it this far, thank you again for watching. Quantum is out.